So Trump the chump doesn't want to recruit black people for the U.S. military anymore. I wonder why. Maybe it's because the contributions made by the beautiful black military soldiers throughout the U.S. history are numerous. Our black military contributions go all the way back to the start of this stolen country's history. So let's start from the beginning. The American Revolution. In 1775, over 5,000 black soldiers served in the Continental Army, fighting for independence from Britain. They were enslaved and fought in exchange for freedom. But after the war, black soldiers, despite their crucial role in securing American independence, were betrayed and denied that promise of freedom. This would continue to happen, by the way. Instead, they were returned to slavery. And then came the Civil War in 1861. The Civil War marked a turning point for black soldiers. Over 180,000 black men served in the Union Army, primarily in the United States Colored Troops, called the USCT. They played crucial roles in major battles and helped tip the balance of power in favor of the Union. The most famous of these units was the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, who fought bravely in the assault on Fort Wagner. Despite their significant contributions, black soldiers faced extreme racism from both the Confederate and Union forces. After the war, many black veterans were treated as second-class citizens. They struggled to access the benefits and recognition given to white veterans. And racial violence in the South, such as the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, continued to target them. Next up, we have the Spanish-American War in 1898. Around 10,000 black soldiers served in the Spanish-American War. Black people were placed in segregated units, but they still fought valiantly. One of the most notable groups was the 9th and 10th Cavalry, known as the Buffalo Soldiers, who played key roles in Cuba. After the war, black veterans were still treated with disdain and discrimination. Even though they had proven their courage, racism continued to pervade American society. Many veterans returned to segregated communities and were denied the full rights and respect of their white counterparts. Next up was World War I in 1917. About 350,000 black men served in World War I. The 369th Infantry Regiment, known as the Harlem Hellfighters, gained fame for their bravery in battle, winning France's prestigious Croix de Guerre. I'm sorry, that probably was a terrible translation, but it was a very important award. They won this award for their actions on the front lines. Despite their distinguished service, black soldiers faced racism both at home and abroad. In France, they were often treated better than they were in the U.S., but upon returning home, they were met with hostility, violence, and segregation. The post-war period saw the rise of the Red Summer in 1919. Marked by race riots in numerous cities. World War II was next in 1941. Over 1 million black Americans served in World War II, both black men and women, in many segregated units. The Tuskegee Airmen, an all-black squadron of pilots, gained national fame for their heroics and impressive combat record. Black soldiers also served in combat roles in Europe and the Pacific. Black soldiers faced harsh discrimination, both in the military and in civilian life. On returning home, many were subjected to the same systemic racism as before the war, including segregation, limited job opportunities, and violence. Despite their contributions to defeating fascism abroad, black Americans continued to fight for civil rights and equality at home. Next up was the Korean War in 1950. The Korean War marked the beginning of the integration within the U.S. military, contributing to the success of the United Nations forces. Although the military was officially desegregated in 1948 by President Truman's Executive Order 9981, racism and discrimination were still pervasive in the ranks. Next up was the Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975. Around 300,000 black soldiers served in Vietnam War. The 369th Infantry Regiment was reactivated, and the black soldiers were heavily involved in combat on the front lines. Many black soldiers also became anti-war activists, speaking out against the war and the treatment of black people in the military. Despite this significant participation, black soldiers faced discrimination within the military. They were often given dangerous, menial jobs. When they returned home, they faced the same racial prejudice as other black veterans. Many veterans were disillusioned by the war and the racial inequality they experienced both on the battlefield and upon their return. Post-Vietnam, the black soldiers continued to serve in all branches of the U.S. military, with many achieving high ranks and distinguished service. Black Americans have played roles in both Gulf Wars, the War on Terror, and the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Although there has been significant progress in terms of integration and equality in the military, racism persists. Black service members have reported discrimination in assignments, promotions, and leadership opportunities. On returning home, they have often faced similar challenges as those faced by earlier generations of veterans, including systemic racism in employment, housing, and policing. They were frequently denied the same post-war benefits, such as the GI Bill, as their white counterparts. But what's the big deal? I mean, what's the GI Bill anyway? Well, I'm glad that I asked myself that question. The GI Bill provided financial assistance for veterans to attend college, vocational schools, and technical training programs. It covered tuition, books, and other related expenses. This access to education helped many veterans earn degrees and improve their job prospects after returning home. The bill also provided funding for apprenticeship programs and job training. Home loans. Veterans were given the opportunity to obtain low-cost, government-backed loans to purchase homes, farms, or businesses. The goal was to help them secure stable housing and avoid the financial difficulties that many would have faced when transitioning back to civilian life. Unemployment benefits. The GI Bill offered unemployment compensation for veterans who were unable to find work immediately after returning home. This helped veterans support themselves and their families during an often difficult period of readjustment. Healthcare. Veterans were provided with access to medical care through the Veterans Administration, now the Department of Veteran Affairs, which expanded its network of hospitals and clinics to accommodate the needs of returning soldiers. The GI Bill played a major role in post-World War II economic boom. It helped millions of veterans secure higher education and home ownership, which in turn contributed to the growth of the middle class, the white middle class. While the GI Bill was revolutionary in many ways, its benefits were not equally available to all veterans. Black veterans in particular faced significant discrimination when trying to access the GI Bill benefits. Many were denied admission to colleges, faced racial segregation in housing loans, and struggled to get fair treatment from the Veterans Administration. This created a significant gap in opportunity between black and white veterans, particularly in the realms of education and home ownership and employment. So to recap, Black American soldiers have made invaluable contributions to every major U.S. military conflict, often serving with distinction under difficult and segregated conditions. Unfortunately, their treatment upon returning home was often unjust, as they faced the harsh realities of systemic racism, the harsh realities of being black in America. However, their courage and resilience and perseverance have paved the way for future generations of Black Americans to serve with honor and dignity. My grandfather was drafted to the Korean War, and he is the greatest man I've ever known, and I miss him every day of my life, and I always will. And if he had not survived being on the front lines of that war, I would not be here. I'm grateful for the sacrifices he made for me, for our family. I'm grateful to all the Black men and women who serve this country, not for them, but for me, for us. And with that, I say, I love you, Black man. I love you, Black woman. Knowledge is power, power to the people.